Hey, welcome back to the Modern Craftsman podcast. Today we have Danette Beal on the podcast. She posted something on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago about the elevated client experience and was relating it to our industry. And it's something that I'm super passionate about. And her post was timely because I have been kind of putting together this entire client journey of what it's like to build a house, what it's like to renovate a house, what it's like to just be in a project, and all of the small touch points that we can elevate and be better at to create a really great client experience. So Danette, brought her on. She's got an impressive background working with some of the largest brands in the world. You'll hear how she has worked with multiple tech companies, previously with Diggs, who we've talked with on this podcast before. And most recently, she's the vice president of marketing at Alosant, and has a lot of intel on how even the smallest, the two-man shop builders can really elevate the client experience. And it's not as complicated as you might think. So it's worth listening to, and it's worth, considering how you can make your client experience that much better.
Yeah, it was exciting to speak with her. I think it's always great to have guests on who are somewhat in a different industry than we are. Yeah, she is in the building and the development industry, but I think her perspective is unique compared to what we do. So she really digs into, like Nick said, client experience, discusses the main pillars of the client experience and how that's so much different than just your relationship with your clients. And that was really an eye-opener for me, because I always look at it from, hey, client experience is just my relationship with my clients, and it's so much more than that. She brings the experience of working with these bigger companies and how that a lot of those principles transcend into smaller companies, like most of the residential building industry in this company or in this country. And she also tells a story about how a replacement tent pole really changed her perspective on customer service. So give it a listen. Appreciate everyone hanging around. And as always, enjoy the show.
And guys, after you listen to this podcast, make sure you head over to moderncraftsman.co, scroll all the way to the bottom, and fill in your email. We're providing a little bit more intel and insight in all of these episodes through our emails. So you need to be signed up for that newsletter to get that. This podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. Experience the next level of energy efficiency with Andersen 400 Windows with triple pane glass. This new option is now available in the Northeast and is designed to meet stringent stretch code standards and Energy Star version 7 performance requirements. The triple pane option also aligns with Passive House and net zero performance goals.
Andersen 400 series windows with triple pane glass boast various coating options for optimal insulation. Customers can choose from options like dual low E4 enhanced or low E4 enhanced with heat lock technology, enabling the best fit for their climate and energy needs. Crafted from wood with PermaShield exterior cladding, Andersen 400 series windows combine timeless aesthetics with weather-resistant construction, making them ideal for New England's harsh climate and New Jersey's. New Jersey, a little love here. Additionally, the triple pane glass option helps homeowners reduce their energy bills. For more information, head over to andersenwindows.com/moderncraftsman.
This podcast is also brought to you by Buildertrend. So here's the deal. Construction is changing, and builders who embrace technology aren't just keeping up, they are evolving. So are you falling behind? Because Buildertrend is your secret weapon to streamline workflows, increase profitability, and compete at the top of your game. From managing bids to client updates, it's all in one place so you can focus on building, not battling outdated processes.
See how the right tools can transform your business. Schedule a free demo today at buildertrend.com/mcdemo.
And this podcast is also brought to you by Velux. Skylights are a surprising way to add interest to your home, and we hear that homeowners are so happy after installing Velux skylights that they wish they installed more. Velux's cut, place, and seal technology makes it easy to add natural light to your build, and innovative technology, including built-in rain sensors, Solar power and 3 layers of leak protection make skylights a great addition to any project.
And most builders agree they're even easier to install than a vertical window while still creating an impressive space. Visit veluxusa.com/remodeler to learn more about their industry-leading installation and warranty.
Danette, I feel like it's been a while since we've chatted. You've changed companies, and then all of a sudden you're on LinkedIn talking about customer experience. And I said, I need to get you on the podcast because this is a
Yeah.
hot topic. And that's what we want to talk about is customer experience, brand identity, branding, marketing, everything that if you poll the entire US, the builders are doing wrong, as articles say.
I don't think they're probably doing everything wrong, but they could probably be doing it a little bit better.
No one's doing everything wrong, but a lot of people are doing a lot wrong.
Yeah.
Or approaching it I shouldn't say doing it wrong, approaching it the wrong way, or having a set mentality, in the sense of like, this is what I do and I don't change. And I think that's a big thing in branding and marketing is the constant evolution, and how frankly fatiguing that can be.
Yeah. Especially when you throw in customer experience and trying to brand and market your company and be the best experience provider that you can be, it can be really overwhelming for a lot of companies, specifically home builders in the home build industry, on where do you get started? How do you, and that's really what I've been mulling lately is, as a company that we're really, really focused on customer experience. Does customer experience really resonate with home build industry and home builders that are out there? And where we focus is really land developers and community building. And so that's the big question that I've been pondering lately, and how you market that to the industry.
From the perspective of your clients?
Yeah. So a little bit about my background and the company that I'm with today. The company's name is Alosant, and we're based in Bozeman, Montana. And we, at our foundation, are a mobile-based resident engagement platform. So we're a community app specific for master plan communities. Master plan communities, for those of you who don't really know what it is, it's typically a large community that's amenitized. So they'll have, in my case of where I've worked in the past, a ski mountain, it could be a golf course, swimming pools, things like that. So we're building all of the resident engagement or that customer experience part for those master plan communities to be able to sell homes faster. So that's where I'm focused.
Real quick, what you rattled off as amenities, I would consider to be like typical when you hear about these master plan communities. And Brad, of course, in Scottsdale, throws me a wild card a couple of years ago and says, "Oh yeah, there's a couple master plan communities with racetracks in the backyard." I'm like, "What do you mean a racetrack?" He goes, "It's basically like if you own a supercar or a hypercar, you get a house and then you can pull through your garage and onto the racetrack." I'm like, "Sign me up!"
Yeah.
Like, that is amazing.
It is pretty phenomenal what some of these communities are doing. We have one that's just here based in Big Sky. And like I mentioned, it's a super luxury high-end resort, and their big draw is skiing. So they've got a full ski operations mountain up here, and pretty much anything that those members would want, they can get at their fingertips. So that's essentially the operations that we're in. It doesn't have to be at that scale. Some of them are, maybe 250 homes up to some of them are 40,000, 50,000 homes. So they're the size of small towns or large towns in a lot of senses. So yeah. And how do you take those large communities and make them feel small, make them feel like somebody is connected and part of something? And so that's where our software and our platform come in.
So what's your day-to-day look like? Like, who are you dealing with on a daily basis?
Yeah, so our buyer is really twofold. We work directly with land developers. So we're coming in very, very early in community development process. Really, when they break ground is when they start considering Alosant as a software. We work with the sales and marketing teams within that land development. And then once a community or once a prospect home buyer turns into a resident, and once they have enough residents, then we start working with the operations team and the lifestyle directors within that community. So our software needs to be flexible enough to, be able to make that jump in processes from how do you work with a prospect and be able to move over to residents who have a whole different need for what they need internally. And we've been able to fill that gap. The company started in 2017. And before that, I don't think that there was really anything out there that was, a community app or mobile-based platform in this sense. So we were one of the first ones to do it, and we're still one of the only ones that are out there.
When you say community app, like in a nutshell, what is this software supposed to be doing?
Yes, great question. So if you are a resident, for instance, typically when you've got places or these amenities that you go into, you need to be able to make place reservations. So
Mhm.
we can handle all of their reservations. A lot of these master plan communities also have a large event base in them. So we're able to handle all of the event management side of that specific community, as well as, many of them have large, vibrant commercial districts. So they've got restaurants and, different vendors that they have inside the community. So we can manage all of that communications and then really all the communications that you would have within the community. Typically, some of these communities can have, some of the larger ones can have 3 or 4 different neighborhoods inside of them. So you might have a gated community over here that you want to have different communications than a, neighborhood over here. So we're able to segment that out and to handle all the communications on the back end for them. And then the last piece of our product is, most communities have some sort of gated or security system. So access control into their fitness centers or just gates
Mhm.
into their community itself. So that's all mobile based through our app. We can handle all of that for anybody going into those communities.
So this has nothing to do with like from a maintenance perspective or home management or anything like that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. We started out with communities and being really
Mhm.
focused on master plan communities. And a big part of that is the builder persona. Builders are a huge part of a community ecosystem. And so we're starting to move into more of the home buyer experience and
Mhm.
working with builders directly on how could we potentially make that a better experience for home buyers as they go through the build experience and into that handoff into being a resident of a community.
It's funny, like you're talking about the buying process. I saw I forget who it was. Um but they were talking about the car buying process, which I think is a whole nother process that needs to be fixed. And they were talking about it kind of in a lighthearted way and just saying how when you're buying a car, it's like you think that would be a really structured, like really straightforward, low stress. Like I want a car, it's $50,000. Here's 50,000. I leave, but instead it's like you go in and it's just like a bunch of just a mess, like paperwork
Mhm.
everywhere. Like this, it was 50,000, but now it's 52, and it was like, and it's just a disaster. Like from a buyer's perspective, it's just like overwhelmingly complicated. And I think the home buying process is right behind it. You know, anyone that's ever bought a home, it's like this incredibly stressful period of just making sure all the bits and pieces are done. Like you're signing papers that like you're constantly signing paperwork and truthfully you hope that you understand that everything that's in that paperwork, it's hundreds of pieces of paper. So little of it is done digitally. But that process is cumbersome. And once the purchase is done, like once you've landed on the purchase and you're in the home, there's this like sense of kind of calmness, right? Like you're beyond it. Like the deposit money's gone, like your down payment's done. You got about 30 days before your first mortgage payment is done, and like the stress is kind of like reduced. So you talking about making that experience better. I think that's obviously in the the whole schedule of events, like that is step one. Like, how do we make the home buying process better?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, speak to that.
Oh, yeah, sorry. And, that's really where we came in. Rancho Mission Viejo was a community, and it still is a community in California, but that's really where Alosant started. And one of the things that they wanted to control was, as home buyers were going through the home buying process and working with builders and with all the complexities that were in that process, they wanted to be able to control the communication and what their vision was from the community, and be able to have that narrative as their own and to have their own customer experience to help them through. So as you're dealing with the complexities of the home, how can we as a community make you feel a lot better about the investment that you have? And it's really interesting that you talk about cars. We were talking about this I'm part of a consumer trends council, and it's fascinating that buyers will pay so much more for a car, and the ROI of it is not even close to what a home is. And, their car payments, they will increase it to the max, sometimes $1,400 a month in car payments. They're just going to continue leasing those cars for the rest of their life. But when it comes to buying a home, which they're going to be living in, starting a family in, and really building a history in, it's really hard for them to get over those humps. And it just shows you that the car building process and car manufacturing, they're great marketers, and so I think
That's
that's where
exactly, it's
Mhm.
exactly true. I mean, you think about when you're buying a car, everything that is centered around the reason that you're buying that car is based on the performance, the comfort, the status. Like that's what everything is tied back to the car. It's never buy this car, it's a great investment. There's never
Yeah.
a single like note about the investment of what this car will be for you in 5, 10, 15 years. It's just not part of the conversation. Everything about buying a home is based on the financial investment. Everything that it starts with the comp, like what's the house worth, like so you can finance it, and then from there it's when a client builds or buys or renovates, it's like, well, I really can't put more than $500,000 into it because it's not worth that. It's like,
Mhm.
I do understand that, but you also in the same sentence told me that this is your forever home. So, I mean, if you do put more than $500,000 into it, you have exactly what you want, and it is now, everything to you and your family. But if you don't, now you've made this massive compromise for the project, and frankly, you're probably just not going to be happy with it, and then you end up selling it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I mean, I don't think everyone should necessarily over invest in their projects, but I think that you know if and when it makes sense, that you have to put the ROI aside and realize that some of these decisions are solely based on what makes sense for you, and if you are have the financial means to pay for something like a nicer car, why not pay for a nicer home?
Mhm. I think what it really comes down to is most people are emotional buyers, and the scariest emotion that we have is uncertainty.
Hmm.
And, we want to be certain that we're spending our money wisely. We only have so much of it. Even, the richest people out there are
Hmm.
still pondering that question of, do I feel certain about this purchase? Is this a good purchase? And that's where it comes in. And, with going back to the car analogy, with a car, you can say, okay, for the next 5 years, I'm going to love this car. It gives me status. It makes me
Hmm.
feel a certain way. But when it comes to a home, unfortunately, as a country, the narrative has always been your home values are down, your home values are up. And the conversation shifts so rapidly that it's really hard for consumers to really understand, can I be certain about the investment that I'm making today? And
Hmm.
trying to weigh that with the emotional value of, what that home means to them
Well,
is really tough.
it's probably a big reason why these master plan communities do so well. Like when they're built around the amenity space, like I know some builders around the country that they build 8-figure homes in these communities, and they're built on a golf course, and then that person's paying $500,000 for a membership to the golf course. And sometimes they're selling it like to someone, they might keep the membership and sell their home. It's like, sorry, the membership doesn't, like, I'm not giving you my golf membership.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's, I guess, getting back to my point, it's like the reason that these master plan communities do so well is that they're creating inherent value beyond what just the home is. You're living somewhere that has far more to offer. You think about like a hotel. Like I think everything you're really explaining is very similar to a hotel, right? Like the key card access, number one, from a technical side, but also the amenity side of it. It's like you go to these hotels for the amenities. You want the nicer amenities. You're in, and you're typically willing to spend more on a hotel. It does the same thing. It's like I can spend $100 and stay at the Holiday Inn, or I can go spend $1,000 and stay at the Standard. And the Standard's amenities are far nicer. And it's like, and that's, and I'm going to be here and I'm going to be spending my time here. I want those amenities to be nicer.
Yeah, I think the difference with where we come in with the master plan communities is, with a hotel, it's usually built out. So the infrastructure is there and they can see the nice, shiny thing that they're buying into. A lot of these communities, and this was my experience, I had worked up at the Yellowstone Club up in Big Sky. I think it was founded somewhere around 2003. I started in 2005. And, the memberships up there were $300,000 to $400,000 to join. And then you had to build a home. That was part of the contract. So $2 to $3 million was the minimum for what to build a home up there was. And when you looked at the grounds, it was a construction site. It was, 13,000 acres of large semi trucks and construction workers. We were just in the middle of building the Warren Miller Lodge. And, we had facades up, fake walls. So when you walked in, if you actually knocked on a wall, there was nothing behind it because we were making it look like it was this nice, fancy, high-end luxury place to go when we were building the plane while we were flying it. So that's where a lot of these communities, you've got the builders and the complexity around the build process. And, they may or may not have a good experience through that they can't control. But what they can control is how can we provide them the experience on site, even though we don't have the amenities built out yet. And that's where the uncertainty comes in is if you Google master plan communities, it's, are they ever going to build the pool or the lagoon that they've been promising for the last 5 years? And the way that they bridge that is to build really a cohesiveness around the members or the residents and to build that and foster that community internally. And that's where they use the app for primarily in the beginning stages.
Is your job with Alosant to basically handle the marketing and the branding from like the user perspective to the bigger land developers, or are you in also controlling like the branding and the marketing on the backside, like once they're operational to attract clients to move into these communities?
Yeah. So Alosant's portion is just the technology. So we run the technology that allows them to brand and market their community throughout the entire process. So they create all of that branding and marketing all the way through from the prospect phase. So trying to attract new buyers and then bringing that through to the resident side. So we provide the customer experience platform, which that is part of, the primary focus of that is the mobile app. And then we've got different areas that they can communicate out. That could be text messaging, email. We have a data aspect of that. So we can bring in and organize the data from their backend systems. But as far as any of the strategy and how they handle all of that, we're just the technology provider that empowers them to be able to execute on their strategy.
So what does customer experience look like on your end? I know that you had questions as far as like branding and marketing, and I would say enforcing the user experience. What does that look like from your perspective?
The big thing for me is a little bit about my background. I come from large company B2C customer experience software. So we were working with, most of my experience has been working with the largest brands in the world, and how do you implement customer experience at scale? So think millions and millions of consumers that are interacting with your brand. How do we take that? Where I was really kind of pondering is the value prop for large big brands is obvious. They've got a lot on the line as far as efficiency gains and how much it costs if they don't provide great customer experience. People get online and can rat them out in 10 seconds if they've got a bad brand experience. So everything that we were doing was very, very focused on how do we just reduce the amount of time that we spend with consumers and give them a better experience for the brand overall. And that helps them with their brand identity. Where we're coming in is, it's the same fundamental question. It's just a different audience. It's how do we provide the same level of service for communities at a smaller scale? And for instance, do builders care about that? Does customer experience resonate the same way that it does when you go to a Salesforce Dreamforce conference, for instance, where everybody is talking about customer experience? And is it something that the home build industry really, cares about or wants to care about? And I think the answer is yes. I think it's a little bit, not everything is focused around customer experience, and it's really understanding where does customer experience come in and where can that play a role at this level, but it's still highly important.
Do you feel that it's possible to create a customer experience at scale to the same level as a smaller company? And I think of that from like the construction perspective, where it seems that a lot of the smaller companies can have that unique client experience or can create the white glove client experience. And I think that as you scale, that becomes more and more difficult because there's more people involved. And I think that that's probably the biggest struggle that people face within our industry as far as client experience. But do you think that that's possible to create a similar experience when you do scale to a larger volume company?
I do. And I think that there's some brands out there that are doing it really well. Customer experience at its core is the sum of all the interactions that you've had with that company or with that brand. So I think a lot of people mistake building a relationship, an in-person relationship with customer experience. And that's just one aspect of it. So the conversations that you have with your clients and throughout your day, that's just one touch point. Customer experience is really everything behind the scenes that you don't see. So the story that I like to tell is I worked for a VP of sales a long time ago who was very well liked. Everybody wanted to work with him and always gave great service, great experience every time that somebody got on a call with him. But he was so popular that nobody could ever get a hold of him. So all of those touch points when people would call and couldn't get a hold of him were bad experiences, and they were experiences that people remembered. So he ended up actually getting, I don't want to say a bad reputation because he was still very well liked, but it was like, oh, if you can get a hold of JP, he's amazing. Mm-hmm. But if you can't, good luck trying, and you're not going to be able to get what you need. So that is really where the experience comes in and where technology can help. That is, as you look at your company, and this is what all the big brands are doing as well. They're trying to do the same thing, which is, what are the processes that we have? How can we make those processes more efficient? Mm-hmm. And then how can we break down those barriers in working with our consumer or our customer, whether it's by the millions or by the tens, and just make every interaction that we can control an easier interaction for them. And those aggregated up into, the sum of all parts. And when you're looking at building a home, that could be for the next 2 years, creates their interpretation of what their experience was. So I think that's the piece that's people miss.
Have you started digging into that on your end from like a construction home builder perspective?
Yeah, so we are looking at it just on that customer journey. And this is a lot of what our clients do is, what does that customer journey look like? So actually, and this is an exercise that I would say if you're really committed to your business, you should probably do this exercise, but get a whiteboard, sticky notes, and write down, if you can, and I know that there's a lot of variables, but what are the phases of the
Hmm.
processes that I have? And where are those times when I have a customer interaction or a client interaction and really understand what that looks like? And then from that, you can back up and say, okay, where do I have the most pain points within that experience? Is it, I think some of them are probably going to be with third parties and, when we deal with people outside of our control, but what are the pieces of that experience that we can help or make better? And can we create a process that's a scalable process that can help us make that experience a little bit better every time that we work with a client?
I want to go back to something you said a minute ago with that VP of sales, because I think one of the key lessons in what you just explained is the fact that if it's offered, it needs to be accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And if his attention is offered but not accessible, it's worse than if it's not offered at all.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I think about it's funny, Danette. I did that whiteboard exercise literally last week for our customer journey, and like just refining the experience and just thinking about, exactly what you said. Like, what are the phases, but how do we efficiently communicate them? And they're when you really break it down, it's not a you're not really doing anything very complicated, and it comes back to the root of just like good communication.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a call with another builder. I won't use his name because he asked me not to share this, but he had asked me, he goes, do you care about the customer experience? And answer me honestly. I said, and then he paused. He goes, wait a second. Let me just, before you answer that, let me just say that I don't. I just want to build cool stuff. And I said, that's fair, but like the outcome of the home, when the home is all done, like, would you want to be invited back to like enjoy the home that you built, that you spent 2 years building? Like, is that important? And I started to kind of get him to like see where I was going with it. But you know, I think so many of us and so many builders say that they have a good customer experience or want to provide a good customer experience, and we talk a big game when it comes to selling the job, but then you're under construction and you had poor pre-construction, you're poor planning, everything's stressful, the client's aggravated at you're quote unquote over budget and behind schedule, and at this point like you don't give a shit about the client experience and you just want to finish the job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first thing to go. And and that's the reality of it. And then you don't get any, there's no brownie points for a good customer experience.
Mm-hmm.
um where I'm going with this is like one of the things that I had thought when I was doing this exercise was when you order an Uber or when you order Uber Eats, there's this, you have the app and you get to see it happening, and like you're seeing like, oh, there's a bicycle on the map and he's going to pick up my food right now. Oh, that bicycle is now moving closer to me, and oh, it's going to be here in 3 minutes. Oh, he's here. And that compared to if you call your local pizza shop and you order a pizza over the phone, and then 30 minutes go by, 35, 40, you're like, when are you coming? And
Mm-hmm.
then you're on the phone. It's like, hey, I ordered a pizza 40 minutes ago. He's like, yeah, Charlie's leaving the shop right now. And that's the answer. It's like, well, like, does he have 6 orders to drop off before he gets to me? Like, and that experience between the two, it's like all they did was communicate along the way where they are at in the process automatically. Like no one's
Mm-hmm.
doing any like manual like update. It's just this automatic thing. But that experience for me as a consumer is so much better because I feel like I'm informed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you preach, and certainly what we talk about a lot is like, you just have to be a good communicator. And I think we struggle with, well, communication is difficult. Like you're constantly updating. I'm constantly sending this, and I'm constantly updating the budget. And it's like, sure, but let's break it down simply and just find ways to simplify the communication and keep the client informed and feel as though they know where they're at in the process. Because when they don't and they ask you, it's too far gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're removing the uncertainty from that interaction, and that's, and if you look at why people are doing it, and that is the big question that I'm pondering, is do people actually care about customer experience? And if I can go back and ask that person a counter question, it would be, do you care about profit? Do you care about you bringing your frustration level down and eliminating some of that? And really the gist of what technology can help with customer experience is not just elevating the experience for the end user or for that consumer. It's also making it a lot easier for you. A lot of what you talk about is proactivity. It's how can I, and this is again what the larger companies are trying to eliminate, is how do I eliminate a callback? How do I eliminate that person spending more time with me that they don't need, that I can't spend that time giving them a good experience? I have to defend whatever we're in the middle of doing. And so it's a little bit of a strategy game of how do I eliminate the things that don't advance the ball forward? And in doing that, it provides a better experience and it provides you a more efficient business, on the back end. So it's really a game. I look at customer experience as it's as much of you're just defining your processes, making your business run better. And I think you said it, the cherry on the top of that is your clients really, really appreciate that. I would say my best customer experience moment was during the pandemic. Everybody was camping outside with tents. It was like the backyard camping with your kids, and how do we get them out of our face? And unfortunately, one of our tent poles broke in the middle of that process. And it was a tent that I bought probably 13 years before on Steep and Cheap. And I was like, there's no way I am ever going to be able to, this is not under warranty. I don't know where any of my information is. There's no way I'm going to call this company and they're going to say that it's under warranty. But I was like, just send me a pole. Like, I will pay at that point $500 for this pole so that I could, camp with my kids outside in a tent and just get them out of my hair. And I called the company on like a 5:00 on a Sunday, and I didn't even call them. I chatted with them and gave them the information. And they said, oh yeah, they knew the exact information from my phone number with everything that I had. They said, you got this tent from this company on this date. I was astonished. I had been doing this for years, and there's very few companies who were at that level at that time. And they were like, yep, here's your tent pole. And 2 days later, we had it. And I astonished. All they did was they were able to make the information accessible on their back end and eliminate any uncertainty or any question that I had on my end. And they said, here you go. They had it right teed up.
But even like in a simpler light, all they did was when you purchased it, they decided to file it and track it. They didn't retroactively go looking for your order. It was like, hey, we're going to change our process. So as people come into our system, we will, tag, that person with this product. So if they ever call back with the phone number, we can pull it up. That's what I was getting at, is like these moves they're simple if you're putting them into place. And I think you said it earlier, it's the sum of a bunch of little things. And over time, it's the 1% rule. If you're 1% better every day, it's like by the end of the year, that's a lot of percent better. And it's, and it can be directly related to this customer experience. I wish I had thought of that. What you said is like, do you care about profit? Do you care about, the end result with the client in terms of, the customer experience? Because, that builder, yeah, for sure, like cares about profit and cares about his business. It was just the fact that in his case, and I think in a lot of people's cases, is like they feel as though they're prioritizing keeping the client happy over making money. And the reality of that situation is, no, you're just so far into the project where you didn't establish these systems. And now, you can skate, for quite a while just fine. But when something trips you up, you're going to, click down a percent, and over time you're going to keep going down, and you'll never get back up to where you were because you didn't have anything holding you there to begin with. Your process was just kind of put together, and you were seeing how far you could go. Where like the tent company, it's like they went into it knowing, hey, one day that pole might break, and we're going to keep her phone number, so when she calls, I'm going to be in the warehouse packing that pole up as she's calling at the same time, because I know that's what she needs.
Yeah, and that's the advantage that larger corporations have, is they have so many clients and so many customers that they know that the question's going to come up. So they have to be prepared for it. But one of the things that we help our clients, and we just had a client that a community that became a client of ours, and they had growth and scale. They were going to scale to over 20,000 homes. And a lot of their processes were manual. So as they started out the community, when you have, you're working with 10 to 100 people, it's really easy to process reservations and, tickets and things like that through email. So they were handling it very one-off, high engagement rates. So they were having one-on-one conversations with residents and prospects, but everything was handled via manual email. And they knew that as they scaled, that diminishing returns, the one-on-one touch points that they could have with those residents and prospects were not going to be able to be something that they could sustain as they grew to, 10, 20,000 people within that community. And they knew it was going to come up sooner than they thought. And so investing in automation and a technology that could handle a lot of that process on the back end was the easiest way that they could set up their processes to ensure that they could scale rapidly. And they still have that time to make those touch points and to have those moments with their clients. They just can better control when those touch points were, and they don't have to spend so much time on the back end trying to find that information or pull up, what was the change in this? They've automated that entire process. And so that's where, were they looking at it from a customer experience perspective? They definitely had a KPI in there that they wanted to make that resident experience feel not painful. But at the end of the day, it was really, how do we make this more efficient so that we don't have to grow to, 50 people to manage this process as we've got, 20,000 residents in our community. And that is the piece that is the biggest piece with customer experience that I think people, again, miss. It's they look at it as, how do I make these delightful moments for my client? And it's really around, how do you just make it easy to where it doesn't even feel like it's a moment? They're just interacting and they don't notice that it's an experience or a service or not. They just get what they need and move on with their day. And that's what a lot of, what I do is all about.
Guys, quick break from the podcast. Make sure you head over to moderncraftsman.co. Scroll all the way to the bottom, sign up for our newsletter. That's where you get all of the additional information about the show, behind the scenes, everything we have going on. Make sure you sign up for that newsletter. We'll keep you in the know with everything Modern Craftsman.
Do you have any insight as to... So a lot of our industry is going to be smaller companies, right? And a lot of times that they're experiencing an issue, it's the first time they're experiencing this issue, right? They haven't had 10,000 tent poles that they've had to replace. So what are some ways that a smaller company who doesn't have a massive staff, doesn't do a ton of volume, can better their client experience and then market and generate leads based around that? Because I think at the end of the day, like most of what we do as far as client and user experience is to differentiate, to build a better value proposition, and then to create basically an angle to sell yourself to generate leads, whether you're looking to not competitively bid projects, whether you're looking to land your work at a higher price point. Like, that's why we're establishing and developing a business with a better client experience. Is not just like, we're not doing it because we just want to please our customers. More like, at the end of the day, it's to create more sales or make more money. So what are things that somebody who has a small company or is just starting out can do to better that client experience?
Yeah, I think being very focused on organization and process. I've kind of hit on that a couple of times, but making sure that, you might not be able to anticipate every question or problem that comes up. That, if somebody chooses a selection, for instance, there is a probability at some point of what happens if that selection doesn't come in. So looking at some of those pieces of the process that come up consistently over time, even though it's not that specific situation. And is there a way to create a process or to use technology so that I have a backup plan? So it's almost, how can I create a process that gives me a backup plan that makes it a little bit easier for that client to get through whatever situation that is? And that's hard for me to answer because everybody's business is a little bit different as far as, how builders run their business. I think that is the big question mark with builders and technology, is that everybody does it a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
But in your own business, just being very critical is not the right word, but very focused on your own business and understanding, okay, what are the processes that I have? And then what are those hangups that I consistently see? And then how can I get ahead of those? Maybe not have the right answer right away or the perfect answer, but is there something that I can put in place that can help?
Well, it's funny. I think that as Nick and I dive deeper into the industry and the business and marketing and branding and client experience, and, again, developing that value proposition, looking to differentiate yourself, it seems that so many aspects of what you do or what larger companies do or what other industries do transcend those industries, and they're applicable to our businesses and small businesses. And obviously you have to tailor them to fit your processes, but so much of what people do in other businesses and just general business principles can be applied on a much smaller scale to what we do. And I always find it interesting that there's probably so many things you do with your day-to-day job that the foundation for those things definitely transcend what you're doing and can be applied to our business as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the mix for success in there is to not try and over-engineer the process. So
Right.
again, you're not going to be able to solve every single or anticipate every single problem that's going to come up, but how can you smooth the edges so it doesn't feel like it's just up and down all the time, but you're more consistently moving, at a more linear pace. And that's where technology can really come in. Again, this is from a large technology company, but using the analogy that it can be the same applicable learnings to a smaller company. This was from a large big box brand, probably one of the most well-known box brands out there. And they were trying to over-engineer their process. Every time a customer called in, they wanted to know exactly what that issue was. And so in the process of doing that, they ended up creating this drop-down menu of over 100 items because they wanted to know, were they bringing back a bed? Did they have pants that didn't fit? Every single thing that you could imagine that could come into a large retailer, they wanted to know. What ended up happening was for them, again, when people would call in, the customer service rep on the other line would spend 15 minutes just trying to figure out what the issue was in this drop-down menu. And in return, the customer had a terrible experience. Their costs went sky high because cost per call is really, really expensive. And they just didn't see the return on that. So they tried to over-engineer the process. We actually came in, and at that time I was a consultant for them, came in and reduced that list from over 100 down to, I think it was like 25 categories, dropped their prices dramatically. They saved millions of dollars. Their clients were happier. Their cost per call or average call times went way down. Overall, it was better for the business, but they were just trying to over-engineer that process. And the over-engineering of the process is the piece that I think that home builders can take away is, technology is not going to fit your business model exactly the way that you need it. But if it can get you 85 to 90% there, help you refine your business, create an elevated experience for your clients, it's going to make your business more profitable, and it's going to make you be less frustrated in the back end. And, that's where we're not trying to at Alosant. We're creating a foundational and flexible platform that allows you to come and build your strategy for your sales, marketing, and your operations. So we're getting you 85% of the way there and helping you be able to execute on the back end.
How can you use marketing or even branding to sell this client experience? Because I think a lot of people probably, especially in our industry, they don't fully understand marketing. They don't fully understand what their brand means. And I think that ends up leading to them not really understanding how to sell their services. And again, this client experience, user experience can be a huge differentiator for a lot of people. And how can people integrate that into their marketing and their branding to be able to sell projects?
Yeah. So I'll answer it from our clients' perspective, because branding and marketing for these communities is, 90% of what they do. And they're using the app, which is a fully branded app, to relay their specific messaging and their vision for their community. So there's a reason why they built this community, and there's a fundamental theme that's different for every single one. Some of them might be an agrihood. They're based off an agrihood. There's Babcock Ranch down in Florida is the, only solar powered town in the United States. They're really big on innovation and sustainability. So everything they do has to have the same branding and messaging that flows through it. So that's one of the reasons why they like our app is it's very visual appealing. They can have their own branding. They can relay their own message, and it allows them to have their own voice with the technology that they have. As far as, branding and communities and not communities, but with home builders and customer experience and remodelers, I think it's really important that you have a larger vision and mission for your company. Is it, Nick, I know that you specifically have a very specific mission and vision for NS Builders, and you've done a lot of work to build out that brand. And you have to have some sort of niche that you're passionate about. Do you want to be the highest quality builder that's out there? Do you want to be, insert the tagline that's really important to you? And then everything that you do should have some sort of messaging that flows through that. And that's where, as a client, we're emotional buyers. We want to be able to have an emotional connection to the people that we're working with, whether it's because you're just a great guy or a great person to work with, or because you believe in something a little bit more than what the next person does. And for us in Montana, I think really being rooted in, and I'm from Bozeman, Montana. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but the builders around here are really being rooted in Montana culture and, having the ideologies of the people around here. I could see where that's really important mission and vision for them that resonates with the people in here. So it really depends on what your specific vision is, and then weaving that into everything that you do.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of people end up missing the mark, and they don't understand how important that is, that it's not just, it can't just live in one place. Your marketing, your branding, all of that, and your mission has to be like comprehensive, and it has to be within everything. And I think that, again, our business is super competitive, and I think that everyone's looking for a way to to really stand out and to differentiate themselves. And from a marketing perspective, I just think that there's so many things that people can do to differentiate and sell their brand that they're not really understanding and not really entertaining on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's more than just a logo. It's more than just a color scheme. It's really what is that thing about you and your company that's going to be different, that tugs on the heartstrings of
Yeah.
the person who you're going to be working with. And it's got to be authentic. It has to be something that is really personal to your company. It can't be, I have a 16-year-old who's got big brand aspirations right now and building companies, and kind of working through a lot of these same aspects with him. And you can't just put out a clothing company, different industry, but you can't just put out a clothing company and be like, this is going to be successful and I'm going to sell it on TikTok Shop and it's going to make $1 million. It
He's
doesn't
trying to
work
be
that
the
way.
next Ben Francis over there.
Exactly. You have to be able to have something that is personal to you and that resonates.
How much are you digging into the buying experience? Because I feel like that's something that has changed dramatically over the past few years, from like even how people are shopping for contractors now, right? With the internet and with social media and YouTube and just having access to so much information. It's not just word of mouth anymore. It's not
Mhm.
just, hey, who did you use to work on your home? A lot of times it's people going to the internet first. So how much are you guys focusing on what the buying process looks like, the demographics, like psychographics of purchasing, when you're trying to figure out how to market and brand a specific company?
Yeah, we're looking at it quite a bit and what buying behaviors are, most. And we're looking at it from the perspective of most people are buying from the internet. So,
Hmm.
there's always, and I don't know if this is specifically relevant to home builders, but I could assume that it is, that the buyer has changed so significantly in the past 30 years that you would find somebody that you trusted, ask them, who do you work with? And they would go out and talk to the person and then start doing business. Most people want to do massive amounts of research. So if you don't have a presence online, whether it's reviews online or a website online, that could be a deal breaker for companies. For us in particular, with large scale builders and communities, they need to go a little bit deeper to what really understand what are the buying patterns of their buyers and how can they get sideline buyers off the bench. So, and how do you start competing with the Zillow.com or the Homes.com of the world, and where you can buy a home off the internet relatively quickly. So those are things that we're considering every single day. The way that we're looking at approaching it is with innovation. So how can we create innovation within our technology that's going to make that buying easier and make that marketing for that home builder a lot easier and break down those barriers. So that's a lot of where our focus is right now, is if they're buying on the internet and if they're doing most of their research on the internet, how can we help inform some of that process and what some of that buying behavior is from that specific buyer.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too, Nick, and that like definitely opens the door for when you start transitioning to generating leads online. Like, how are you sorting through those leads? And this is speaking more to Nick, to start vetting clients and how you can create the systems through your website or through your processes to have clients self-qualify, so that, yeah, we're generating more leads now, but how are we distilling that funnel down to clients that really understand our brand and understand what we do and who we are, to make sure that we're spending the time and the resources on the most well-qualified leads.
Yeah, I mean, I feel, tying back to buying online, I feel like the experience of buying online, Tyler, to your point, with how they're doing the research and comparing it to like retail, like the clothing line, like your son is doing, I find that to be. I feel like we're going to be a lot closer to that with these bigger purchases. Going back to cars, right? Like purchasing a car offline, purchasing a home offline, purchasing services offline, I feel like is going to be a lot closer in the future than we think. I think the opportunity is how we can cater our specific approach, our specific approach as a company, but as an industry as a whole. Like, how do we help vet the specifics, within our business, within the industry from construction? Like, how are we helping the end user really go through that process? I don't know. I just find it interesting, and I think from my side of it, it's it's a big reason why we push so much on social media, and I'm constantly kind of refining what that intake looks like. Tyler, we've done that lead qualifying and finding the right client. It's like the whole purpose of doing that exercise is so you're not only pre-qualifying the clients for your own sake, but pre-qualifying the clients for their sake. Like they're coming in understanding what your product is. They're coming in understanding whether or not they're going to be a good fit prior to even ever having an initial conversation.
Yeah. And I don't know how, like, so what you're dealing with, Danette, on a larger scale is so much different than what we see. Like, and although you guys are doing the builders that you're working for and the developers that you're working for do a large volume, when you look at like the amount of companies, residential and construction companies in the country, I don't know the exact percent, but it's something like 95% of those companies are 1, 2, 3. Yeah, like tiny little companies. So what most of what Nick and I speak with people about, and what we see through consulting, and what we see through just speaking with people within the industry, it's like they don't have any perspective of branding and marketing and generating adequate leads and generating online and offline leads, and what are you putting in place to do this. And I think that that's the interesting conversation, to be able to tap into what these bigger companies are doing and use a lot of the systems and processes and homework that they're doing to better our own businesses. Because you speak with people and it's like, well, how do I get more leads? Like, everyone always wants to know, how do I get more leads? And I don't think it's that dissimilar to the way that you guys and the builders that you're working with approach. It's just that a lot of times we don't have the resources, but I think that the principles can be the same. And I think like for me, I think a lot of people, the process is like, start figuring out who you are and what you do. Start determining what that value proposition is. What can you do differently? Why are people going to hire you? And then I think at that point, you can start developing your brand identity. You can start developing some of your marketing strategy, where you want to go to start developing leads. And I don't think that you can do that until you really understand who you are and what you do in regard to the market and your market locally. And I don't think that that's that much different than what you guys are doing. I just think that it's something that people don't know. People don't know like what you should do with SEO. People don't know where you should be marketing your business. And I'm sure that that's stuff that you deal with on a daily basis that's applicable to our listeners as well. That they can pull some of that information and use that. It's just crazy I know it's not your world that you live in, but you would be astounded to see how few systems there are and how much effort goes into marketing and branding, and understanding how to generate online and offline leads and where you should be spending your time and resources.
Yeah. I kind of going back to an earlier point, I really wonder what the role of the realtor is going to be in the future. I think that, as we start to become more online and buyers become more savvy, do we need a realtor role? That's probably a hot take for the next 5 to 10 years. But,
Yeah.
what is the value that you actually get from that realtor when you can do 99% of the research on your own? So if I were a builder coming into the market as a marketer, I would say at the very least, you have to have an online presence. You have to have a website. You have to have that thing, going back to the mission and the vision, and what is that thing that makes you special? It might be more than just the home, so how are you marketing yourself that makes you stand out from other builders? I would say that a lot of the ways that people buy homes is in location. So where are you building? What are the locations? If you can handle some of that, and making sure that you're, in the know as to where people want to live and where people want to invest, the school districts that they want to be in. But going back to SEO, just making sure that you are searchable. So understanding how people are searching for new home builders. It's probably not new home builders in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's the best builder who cares about X, or whatever the thing is. And you have to start to be able to put together search terms and that match that. I would say that Nick has done a really great job on, or just his organic presence. So do you have to be an influencer? No, but you should have information out there that resonates to your audience. So being able to, whether it's blog posts or spending a couple hours a week and just writing about what your buyers care about and speaking to them on that level about your specific area and getting that out on the internet. That all makes you more searchable, and it makes you become I'm going to say thought leader. That's a very big term for what we're talking about, but it makes you somebody who's an expert. And again, you're removing that uncertainty from that buyer to say, okay, Tyler knows what he's talking about. I don't know Tyler in person, but I've been following along with his information. I'm looking at his website. I see his home. Everything that he's putting out there makes me feel like he's not going to mess up the boiler that he puts into my house. I'm not going to have problems in 5 years because the quality and the craftsmanship is not there. So if you can, and it's all a personal decision as to how much time you want to invest in your business. And unfortunately, there are so many pieces that you have to put into building the home that I think the marketing aspect gets put to the wayside as much as the customer experience aspect gets put to the wayside. But it's the piece that's going to have the most return if you can get it nailed. And again, set up that process early to just commit to it.
Yeah, and even the thought leader comment, I think that's critical and necessary. And I think that what you're saying, blog posts, hopping on a podcast, being active online, and just being present online, having a digital presence, I think leads to credibility, especially in our industry where there's a very small percent of people who are putting themselves out there online. And I think that a lot of people are hesitant to do it. But if you begin to do that, you become more searchable and people find you in more places. That just establishes so much credibility for you and your business. And you do become that thought leader when people look up your business and they're like, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. They were on this podcast. I see their blog over here. Their website's great. They have article. They have conversations with other contractors and architects. And to me, that's just an easy way to become searchable, but also just like you said, create this image of being a thought leader within your industry.
Yeah.
It's such an easy thing to do. I'm using air quotes, but writing a blog or being part of a conversation, you talk about searchable terms and SEO. It's, yesterday, my controller was like, every client we have asks the same question about how a deposit gets applied to a project. And he's like, and I just try to Google it so I could send him something. And there's literally not any good article. And I was like, that means that's a perfect thing. If the question keeps coming up, and that's to anyone listening to this, if you have the same question come up all the time with your clients, create content around that. And because if they have the question, there's probably a lot more people that have a similar question, and it's only going to help drive the traffic back to your point is Tyler's the guy that knows the answer to this. And it's oh, he's also in my market. I want to hire him because he's the one giving me all the information. It's, I don't know. I feel like I have so many thoughts on this process. Your comment about will we need a realtor? It's, I think in one argument, it's like, we will, but it will be a different role, or they will play a different role in the process. You think about, if, by the time this podcast comes out, the builder show will be here and we will be there. But I just read an article the other day. I forget what the number was, but I want to say it was like 300 more exhibitors were coming this year. And I was like, where? Like, and I'm reading through the list, and it's primarily like a ton of software. And I remember last year looking at some of the software that was there, and just how they have taken, I'm going to switch gears here for a second, but like how they've taken the whole planning process of building, kind of a relatively simple home where, there's companies there that you can draw a floor plan and then extract that plan, which will literally pump out a set of construction documents once you're done manipulating the model. And it's, and you see that, and, you're immediately impressed. And I'm looking at it as like, if they can do that, they can automatically populate a material list. They could automatically populate how much that thing's going to cost. And you can just continue to push that technology like all the way through that process, where it's like, now you could get to a point where it's like, I like that house, I like that lot, it's this much money, and you're done. Because everything is like, it's not this, it's not this, figure it out as you go, or as you said earlier, like building the airplane as you're flying. It's, that process, it's the pre-construction that we preach. It's why I talk so much about, moving construction off site. It's all tied back to the same thing. It's like, how do you create a simpler, more efficient process? And when you're doing that, not only, are you creating a better experience for your client, but you're exactly right. Then you're now more profitable. Like it's what you're going to do, what has to happen. There's less variables because this stuff has been considered and thoughtful. And you're also monitoring and tracking this information in a way that you're then communicating to the client.
Do you have like a cheat sheet for what's involved in a customer experience? Like, these are the 5 main aspects of client experience.
Yeah. I mean, I have a few categories, so to speak. I would say we've touched on one, which is efficiency. So I think just making sure your processes are in place. The other one is to make information accessible, and there's a data aspect to that. So, one of the things that you risk with software is that you've got different information in different systems, or even worse, it's in people's heads. So how do you take the information and make it more accessible and put it in a place where you don't necessarily have to be the one that relays the information to the client? And then that goes into the third one, which is, making it easier to connect. And this goes back to the diminishing returns of in-person conversations. You might have clients who don't want to talk to you all the time on the phone, or who don't want to go to the job site all the time. So really understanding your own specific clientele and how you connect with them, and if there are more efficient ways that you can connect with them, that also creates a situation where you can save that data in places that's easily accessible for your team. So those are, that doesn't really have anything to do with elevating the experience, but those 3 things together, when put into play, dramatically increase and elevate the experience for clients. And this is industry agnostic. I think that's the foundation of what large companies do. I've seen it at smaller companies. If you can really focus on those 3 areas, it's going to help you become more efficient, become more profitable, and also create a better experience for your clients.
And I think that that's interesting also because, prior to hopping on here, and I don't think I really sat down and paid too much attention to it. But if you were to have asked me, I want to provide a white glove service for my clients, what does that look like? What's important to you? And I think that most people would say it's being proactive, solving problems when they arise, and then like simplifying that process. But there's so much more to it than that, right? And like I also think the big thing for me would be the personal relationship that I have with my clients, and realizing that that's not the only touch point for client experience. Like I think when I think I had a good client experience, it's either somebody who just took care of me, they were really kind to me, they made me feel important, they made me feel heard. I've had great client experience or customer experience as somebody, as a buyer, where somebody just made the process super easy and didn't consume a lot of my time. And then I've had great user experience when I purchased a product and like you experienced, something went wrong with it and they made it right, and made making it right a really easy process as well. And there's just so many ways to build like this really great, strong, robust user experience that's more than just my relationship with my clients and then putting out fires.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Going back to marketing, one of the things that I'm a huge proponent of is just making information accessible. So even as simple as a knowledge base, which is very foundational to customer support, having some of the answers there on your website that's easily accessible for your clients when something comes up. A lot of people don't, I mean, I'm an introvert, extrovert, but I tend to, the older that I get, become more introverted and just don't want to deal with people. I'm also
Same.
I'm also a Zennial millennial in that boat, but if I can find it on my own, I'm going to find the answer on my own. So how many of these things that come up in the building process are just questions that people have? Where do I find X? And how much of that can you spend, maybe a couple hours, put them up on your website, maybe even a gated page so that they're the only ones that see it. And here's all the answers to the questions that you might have. If something else comes up, call us. That is a huge elevation in experience, because they don't have to call you. They don't have to wait for the call back. They don't need to wait for an email. They can just find the answer and they can keep going back. And then that's something that gets them really excited too. I think I've bought 2 homes that were new builds, and both of them, there's that process where you're waiting for the build to be done. And all you want to do is talk and think about that home and what can I learn about the home? How can I find information about the home? And it's that place where they're super giddy. And so how can you, spark a little bit of that? And how can you give them that information during that time that lets them play a little bit and just like, ooh, this is the type of cabinets that I'm putting in. Okay. And just learn a little bit more. And how can you make that information more accessible to them to where they can just on 11 o'clock on a Friday night, as they're sitting there drinking wine, thinking, ooh, let me dream about my new house.
Yeah.
Those are the moments that
it is, because I think that so many people struggle with tying marketing to like their clients, and especially in our industry, building trust with that client. And I think something like you're saying right now is an easy way to build a rapport and begin the process of building trust with your client, where it's like you're answering questions for your client or potential client before you've even interacted with them, and you're building trust. Like you're tearing down the walls, you're speaking to some of their vulnerability where they're sitting there trying to find answers to something that they may be afraid to ask. And I think that's a great perspective on marketing and how you can use marketing to build trust with your clients. Because at the end of the day, in our world, like, people are going to hire you either because you're inexpensive or because they trust you or you do something really well. So I think building that trust is super important, just as much as marketing yourself to differentiate yourself within the industry.
Yeah. And I think, part of the building and remodeling process is, do I want to build and do I want to remodel? And getting them to understand that the level of effort that they put into that investment in building a new house or remodeling their existing home is something that's worth it. So there's a lot of, going back to making that information accessible to them. How much of it is out there that really talks about the building and the remodeling process and breaks down those barriers and how you do it different. And it's going to be easier, easier, another quote for easy for them. But, you have to be able to market it that it looks like something that they can do that's easier or as easy as buying a home that's on the market. And I think that is where the opportunity is.
I think that that's a key point, because I think when someone's building or remodeling, as specifically to the client experience, I think that there's so much stress that goes through building and remodeling around the decisions that need to be made.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many decisions.
But what happens is I would argue to say that most clients only are making these decisions because they think that they have to. Meaning, like, if I come to the table and say, hey, we're installing this appliance, 8 out of 10 clients are going to be like, why? And great. There's going to be 2 that say, well, I want something different, or I'd love to explore my options. Maybe appliances are too specific. But the point is I think that we as contractors generally push those decisions off onto someone else. And then it becomes this like multiple meeting discussion, like research mode for even just like maybe just the client goes into full research mode. Mm-hmm. It's like, we're the pro, like you've hired us, hopefully you've hired us because of our brand and what we've built before. So there needs to be this level of trust. And I think about like some of our most difficult projects when in terms of client experience, it's because they were fatigued with decisions. Mm-hmm. And and a lot of those decisions just were unnecessary. And I've seen it, and I've watched, we've internally talked about it as a team. It's like, clients will get in a meeting, do you want soft open and soft close on your pocket door? Client's like, never
thought about it.
I don't know. Like, can you give me is there a cost difference? Which one would you recommend? It's not like, just make it our standard that we only do soft close. And whatever.
Nick, it's funny that you say that, because I just bought that piece of equipment for work, and like it was on the lot and it had options put on it that are just their standard. Mm-hmm. That like, while I began to price the equipment, I mulled over whether I wanted those options or not. But then like when I got a hold of the dealer and was like, this is what I'm thinking, and they're like, oh, we put this and this on it because that's just like what we put on everything. Right. And I was like, all right, how much is it? I'll pay for it. Yeah. And I like, had I built that on my own, that process, like I may not have made the purchase because it didn't like fit all of my program, where it was like, no, they basically made that very easy. Here's everything it comes with. If you want to add these things, it's this much more. Right. And here's what we need basically to sign up and get this off the lot. And it made like the buying experience was pleasurable. Like it was super easy. And that's something that I would refer somebody else to, where it's like, I don't know, that like at the end of the day, it wasn't really even about the price as much as like how easy that entire experience was.
Like, to relate it again back to cars, it's like you go online and start building a car online to order one, like you say you're buying a new SUV. It's like you're going through these options, like you're clicking things based on the fact that it's like, oh, I don't need the $4,000 engine upgrade. But then you go to the dealer and it's like, it has it. It's like, well, why'd you do that? It's like, oh, the other engine's actually, has a ton of warranty issues and we're advising not to use it. It's like, well, I made a decision based on the fact it was $4,000, and you made a decision because you're the professional and know what's best. And I think that's like, you talk about creating a better client experience. It's like reduce the decision fatigue.
Yeah. Indecisiveness is a decision. So how many of those potential buyers are out there on the market and they're not going to you as a builder because that process feels scary? Mm-hmm. When you are the expert and you all know what is the right appliances and what pieces you should put in. You've been working with all these, the pros and cons of every single piece of equipment or whatever goes into that home, how can you take that knowledge and relay it back to your potential, prospective audience of buyers and get them to just get over the hump of like, yes, I want to build this home. And then Tyler's the one that gave me all the information. Let's go see if we can, talk to Tyler about this. But yeah, I chuckle a little bit because I think when most of my friends have built homes from scratch, I have not been in that boat. I've always built a home that was in the process of being built. But refrigerators and ovens and dishwashers and matching them, but they like this brand, but they like these two brands. And the amount of time that they spend on those decisions is like, you're not going to care in 3 years, but it becomes a big,
Once your kids put their grimy hands all over them. I mean, even from what you guys are doing with work too, and like having these entire systems built out, I think of it where it's the same thing as when you go to make reservations now. It's so much easier to go on an app and make a reservation where they have or doctor's appointment, they have all the time slots available. It's not like you have to call, see what's available, then get a hold of your wife, see what her calendar looks like. It's like I can send her a screenshot of what's available, or even Starbucks, right? Like I probably wouldn't drink Starbucks if I had to go in and order a coffee, but just their app makes it so easy to order a coffee, run in and grab it and run out. Which is probably more similar to what you're doing with these large scale developments, is building an infrastructure and a system that can support those type of decisions.
Yeah, exactly. We are really bringing down the barriers to making a decision and buying in that community easy. So we've got the foundation of, we're going to communicate with you. We're going to tell you everything about this community. We are going to have the branding and the vision available for you right away. So if you want to know anything about that community, you just go into the app and you can learn about it. You can learn about the builders who are in there, the model homes, interactive maps that you can go through, and even go and use the trail systems. And we try and make it extremely easy for people to come in, try the community, know that they know what they're buying into, so that when they're ready to make that decision, they're like, ooh, I really, really like that experience. I really liked everything that they stand for. And I want to make this decision to buy into this community. Yeah. And it's very similar. I mean, some of these master plan communities are, down in Texas, for instance, in Florida, there might be 4 of these communities right next to each other. So, take away the regional locational preferences. They're all, for all intents and purposes, they're in the same place. So how do you differentiate? And a lot of that comes down to, this is the mission and the vision and the thing that we're really focused on. And everything in our app makes it very apparent that that comes through, and that experience is really easy for them to come in and see the community.
Are you working with your client to help develop that mission, or is that something they're coming to you with?
Yeah, we stay away from that. We mostly...
Smart.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say we stay away from that, but it's the great thing about the land developers that we work with is they are really honed in on what that mission and the vision is. And they've got really great branding just coming in the gate. So they have a really good identity. And then all they do is use the app to be the channel for that identity to bring it out to everybody that's interacting with that community.
That's cool. So your entire background is in marketing?
No, I actually started in a roundabout way. I started on the product side as a consultant. So I spent a lot of time as a strategic consultant within technology. Then I segued over to a product management role, but it was more of an outbound product management role. So speaking directly to companies about, their product use, what's important to them, what is their mission and vision, and how can they get more out of the technology from that. And out of that, it was an easy transition into marketing. So it's kind of funny. I've done everything in technology except for sales, but I've actually spent a lot more of my time on the consulting and the product side than I have on the marketing side.
Do you like the marketing side better? Is it just new?
I'm a storyteller, and it allows me to tell different stories and to tell other people's stories, to tell our clients' stories. And so I really, really appreciate that part of it. And so I love doing marketing. I've been around some just really cool companies, some really cool people, even just with Nick, some of the companies through the Contractor Coalition Summit, meeting some builders. And I love being a conduit for, different people all over the place and being able to tell their stories. And that's something
Sure.
that we're able to do with marketing.
All right. So you're out in Bozeman. What else do you love to do?
Yeah. We're big skiing
Yeah.
family. I've got 3 boys, 16, 9, and 6. So they're all over the place. So I spend a lot of my time momming and sticking them on skis and throwing them down a mountain. But yeah, we
Do they
soccer
have
mom.
programs through school
They
to
don't.
ski?
They don't through the school, but we do have them in lessons. So
That's cool.
typically on the weekends, we spend our time up on the ski mountain and spend our day skiing. Although we're getting a lot of snow right now, so
Yeah.
I'm kind of over it. I think we got another 8 inches tonight on top of probably about 10 inches before that. So I'm ready for spring.
That's crazy. I haven't been to Montana. It looks beautiful. I mean, Bozeman blew up, right? Like it's crazy now.
It did. It did. I've been here since early 2000s, but Bozeman itself, has been in high growth since the early 90s. So it's,
Mhm.
back when I was a kid, I just about an hour from here, it was maybe 20,000 people. And I think it's over 70, if not more.
Yeah.
Since the pandemic, it's really escalated. So we've always been in a high growth. I've always had new construction around where we've lived, but it's really on hyperdrive since the pandemic and Yellowstone came out. And that was a big driver of why people
Yeah.
come to Bozeman now.
Is there still land to develop that they're like willing to develop?
There is. It's I think it's a balance right now that,
Mhm.
one of the reasons that you invest in Montana, or for me being from Montana, is the open spaces.
Yeah.
And a lot of the land that they're developing, especially in Bozeman, there was a lot of, farmland and everything around the city, which is starting to get developed. So a lot of that is less accessible now that they've had so much growth. But
Yeah.
Montana itself, unlike the East Coast, there's a city and then you drive 2 hours of open space and there's another city and 2 hours of open space. So there's a lot of land inside Montana, but a lot of it is privately owned, just
Yeah.
thousands of acres.
I was surprised how expensive the entire area is in Montana. Like it's not an inexpensive place to live.
It is since 2020, it's been very expensive. I would say Bozeman has always been one of the more expensive places to live,
Yeah.
but it's probably tripled in price what it was since
That's
2019.
insane.
Wow.
Yeah, we bought a house. We bought one of our first houses in the 300s and sold that for the 500s, and now it's not on the market, but it's valued at 900. So if you can think, we bought it in 2016, so 9 years, it's gone up
Jeez. Wow.
$600,000. Yeah, it's pretty
You
amazing.
guys should have bought more real estate.
Yes. We took
That's like, I know.
we
Is Montana the one that's primarily undeveloped? I forget what state it is. It's like not secretly, but like you would think that there's more developed. I forget what state that is.
Wyoming is pretty undeveloped. I think it's
I think you're right. I think it is Wyoming. I was thinking of.
Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana are, there's more cows per capita than there are people.
Oh wow!
I think Wyoming has like the lowest population density.
Yeah,
I think that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I know that Idaho is really growing quite rapidly. The Boise area.
Yeah, especially because that's so close to Northern California. I think that a lot of people got out of Northern California, COVID, and then obviously all the wildfires, and moved to Boise, and then Idaho. Everyone's ruining everything. You know.
Yeah. We've.
That's a Tyler take right there.
I look up real estate everywhere just for fun. I have this like pipe dream of just leaving the East Coast, and I have ever since I was young. And I've like always looked at all over in Montana, even though I've never been there. And I'm like, damn, this like isn't any cheaper than the East Coast. And I'm like, and I don't know what the hell I do for work.
Yeah, it was. My husband's from Maine, and so he came out in 2014, I think. And back then it was reasonable. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely, like I said, in the past 6 years, it's increased quite a bit.
I miss the
It is
boat.
beautiful though. If you come out in the summer, it's not as cold.
Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous.
I ski a fair amount too, and I've never skied in Montana. So maybe I'll have to do that at some point.
It's great. Yeah, Bozeman is, not that I should market it too much because then everybody will want to come out here. But
I think you're max. You're almost capped.
it's we're a half an hour from our local ski hill and 45 minutes from Big Sky Resort. So we ski this year up at Big Sky, which is, phenomenal skiing. I can't remember the exact acreage, but it's one of the largest ski mountains in Montana. And so, excuse me, in the world. So we're really lucky for where we live.
Yeah.
My wife sent me something the other day about it was about Big Sky, and it was like a TikTok, and it was basically like it's cheaper to go to, like, it would be cheaper for us to fly from here to Switzerland and ski than it would be to go to Big Sky and ski.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, by like 3x, like it was like 3 times as expensive to go to Wyoming and ski.
Montana.
Yeah, I think it's
Montana. Yeah.
US ski mountains in general are really expensive. I think it's, you can still go to Europe and spend $40 for a ticket. The tickets up at Big Sky, if you don't have a season pass, are $250 a day, which it's a deal breaker for me. I mean, we invested in season passes, but that's where our vacation goes every year. So weekends up there.
And if you put your kids in lessons, you're really screwed. You have to sell the house.
It's pricey, but well worth it.
Yeah, I skied at Whistler 2 years ago, which is my first trip out west, and since having kids, since having kids, and that was cool. But expensive, like same thing, crazy, a lot of money.
My family just went to. I did not go because I was working, but they went to Banff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was, it's smaller, but it's a lot cheaper than Whistler.
Yeah.
And so, it was totally worth it. They loved it. And it's 3 mountains right around there, 3 ski hills that you can choose from. And we had a great time.
Cool. My trip was like in and out, and we got in, it was dark, just coming from East Coast, losing time. And then we left like basically in the middle of the night to come back. So I don't know, part of going skiing, I like driving into the mountains and out of the mountains. Like, it's just so cool, especially coming from the East Coast where everything's flat. And like you go out west and you drive into the mountains and it's just so huge and expansive. And you're like, wow, this is insane. And I didn't get to experience that when I went out to Whistler. I missed it. But it's super cool being out there and seeing, like, I don't know. I'd love to spend some time out where you are. Just not in the cards with wife and kids and everything else right now. It's time's a little bit tight.
Yeah, no, I hear you. That's our thing is, we're lucky enough to stay or to be in a place that has recreation in the summer and the winter. So we take advantage of the hiking and fishing and golfing in the summer and then the skiing in the winter. But it makes it hard to go anywhere else because it's like summer's the reason why you're here. And then winters are so expensive everywhere else.
That's cool. I appreciate all your insight and time.
Thank you. Thank you.
You should probably be out shoveling, and we got you here on a podcast.
I was honestly afraid this morning that I wouldn't be able to make it into the office.
Oh, no.
It was.
Oh, really?
We got so much snow last night. Yeah. So I'm glad I made it.
I appreciate like Tyler said, appreciate you making time, but appreciate your insight. And I think the client experience conversation is something that we're obviously very passionate about. And like I said, I follow you on LinkedIn, and I was like, all right, I got to get Danette on here and chat a little bit more strategic here and see how we can help, our community of small builders up there, the ante a little bit. So
yeah, I appreciate it. And hopefully some of this resonates with your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely will.